She tried to sue the CEO for abandoning her mid-date. Minutes later, she regretted it immediately. Kate Nichols clutched her phone with trembling fingers as she watched the silver Aston Martin disappear around the corner. The rain was coming down harder now, soaking through her designer dress, a dress she had spent 2 weeks' salary on for this very night. The bustling streets of downtown Chicago had never felt so cold and lonely. Just 15 minutes ago, she had been sitting across from Jackson Reed, the enigmatic CEO of Reed Enterprises, at the most exclusive restaurant in the city. Now she stood abandoned on the sidewalk, mascara running down her cheeks, with nothing but a half-typed text message threatening legal action against one of the most powerful men in the business world. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered to herself, her thumb hovering over the send button. The humiliation burned worse than the chill seeping through her drenched clothes. At 32, Kate had built a respectable career as a marketing director at a mid-sized firm. She was smart, ambitious, and until tonight thought she understood how the world worked. The dating app had matched them 3 weeks ago. Their conversations had been electric, intellectually stimulating and flirtatious in equal measure. Jackson had seemed different from the other men she'd met online, thoughtful, genuine, interested in her ideas rather than just her appearance. When he suggested dinner at Alinea, Chicago's 3 Michelin-star restaurant, Kate had felt like she was living in a fairy tale. That fairy tale had shattered when, halfway through their main course, Jackson had received a phone call. His expression had changed instantly. He'd muttered a quick, "I have to go," tossed several $100 bills on the table and walked out. No explanation, no apology, nothing. Kate had sat there, stunned, as the other diners pretended not to stare. The waiter had approached with a pitying smile, asking if she needed anything else. She had never felt so humiliated in her life. "Miss, are you all right?" A deep voice broke through her thoughts. Kate looked up to see a tall man holding an umbrella over her. His dark eyes were filled with concern. "You're soaking wet." "I'm fine," she snapped, wiping at her face. "Just waiting for a ride." The stranger raised an eyebrow, clearly not believing her. "In that case, you might want to wait under cover. There's a coffee shop just down the block that's still open." Kate was about to dismiss him when her phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down, hoping to see an apology from Jackson. Instead, it was a notification from her banking app. $5,000 had been deposited into her account with a memo that simply read, "For your inconvenience." Taitiar, the rage that flooded through her was instant and overwhelming. He thought he could just pay her off? Like she was some problem to be solved with his pocket change. "Actually," she said to the stranger, her voice suddenly steadier, "do you know any good lawyers who might be in that coffee shop?" The man's expression shifted from concern to interest. "As a matter of fact, I am one. Michael Bennett at your service." He extended his hand, which Kate ignored. "Perfect. I want to sue someone for emotional distress and public humiliation." Michael lowered his hand slowly. "That's not exactly how it works, but I'm happy to discuss it over a hot drink. You look like you could use one." 20 minutes later, Kate sat across from Michael in the warm coffee shop, a steaming mug of chai between her hands. She had explained everything, the match, the conversations, the date, the abandonment, and the insulting payment. "So you see, I have a case, right?" Kate finished, looking at Michael expectantly. "I can't just treat people like this and get away with it." Michael had listened attentively, occasionally making notes on a napkin. Now he set his pen down and looked at her with a mixture of sympathy and professional candor. "Ms. Nichols, I understand your frustration, but legally speaking, you don't have much of a case. Dating etiquette, however poor, isn't legally enforceable. The payment he sent you, while perhaps insulting in its intent, could actually undermine any claim you might try to make. It could be argued he compensated you for any inconvenience, so he just gets away with it?" Kate's voice rose, causing several patrons to glance their way. "Before you decide on any course of action," Michael said carefully, "I think there's something you should know about Jackson Reed." Kate narrowed her eyes. "What?" "Reed Enterprises isn't just any company. They're currently involved in developing emergency response systems that have saved countless lives during natural disasters. Jackson Reed himself has donated millions to various causes. His mother died in a hurricane when he was 12 because emergency services couldn't reach her in time. That's what drove him to develop the technology he's known for. Kate felt the first flicker of doubt. How do you know all this? Corporate law is my specialty. Reed Enterprises is well known in my circles. Michael hesitated. There's more. About an hour ago, news broke that there was a major explosion at one of Reed's research facilities in Milwaukee. 3 employees were critically injured. From what I understand, Reed rushed there personally to oversee the emergency response. Kate's stomach dropped. She fumbled for her phone and quickly searched for the news. There it was, breaking news about the explosion. Videos showed chaos, ambulances, and in the background of one clip, a silver Aston Martin parked haphazardly near the emergency vehicles. Oh my God, she whispered. The realization of what she had done, what she had been about to do, washing over her. The text she had drafted threatening legal action suddenly seemed petty and cruel. We all make judgments based on incomplete information, Michael said gently. The question is what you do once you have more facts. Kate stared at her phone, at the half-written text that now seemed so childish. Her thumb moved, but instead of hitting send, she deleted the draft. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she typed a new message. I just heard the news. I'm so sorry about what happened. Is everyone okay? She hit send before she could change her mind. So, Michael said, watching her closely, do you still want to pursue legal action? Kate shook her head slowly, embarrassment replacing her earlier anger. No, I made a mistake. We all do, Michael replied with a small smile. The real measure of character is what happens next. As if on cue, Kate's phone buzzed again. A reply from Jackson. Thank you for understanding. I'm sorry for leaving like that. Couldn't say why. 3 of my people in critical condition. Rain check. Kate stared at the message. Her emotions a complicated tangle of relief, embarrassment, and something else she couldn't quite name. She looked up at Michael, who was watching her with curious eyes. What would you do? She asked him. Michael considered for a moment. I'd remember that life is complicated, people are complex, and second chances are sometimes worth giving, on both sides. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the city lights reflected in the puddles on the street. Kate took a deep breath and began to type her reply. Unsure where this path would lead, but suddenly certain that she had narrowly avoided making a terrible mistake. Kate's finger hovered over the send button as she reread her message one last time. I understand. I hope your employees recover quickly. Yes to the rain check. Simple, dignified, and far more gracious than her initial reaction had warranted. She pressed send and set her phone down on the coffee shop table. So, Michael said, leaning back in his chair. Crisis averted. Kate nodded, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. Thanks to you. I can't believe I almost... She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Almost sued one of Chicago's most influential businessmen for having an emergency? Michael supplied with a gentle smile. Don't be too hard on yourself. People react instinctively when they feel humiliated. Fight or flight, or in your case, fight with legal action. Despite herself, Kate laughed. There was something disarming about Michael Bennett. With his rumpled suit and kind eyes, he didn't fit her image of a corporate lawyer. She wondered briefly how different her evening might have been if she'd matched with someone like him instead of Jackson Reed. Can I ask you something? Kate said, wrapping her hands around her now lukewarm chai. Why did you stop to help me? I was just some stranger crying in the rain. Michael's expression grew serious. 8 years ago, my sister was stood up on what was supposed to be her engagement dinner. The guy, her boyfriend of 3 years, just never showed. She waited for 2 hours before finally leaving the restaurant. It was raining that night, too. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. A stranger helped her get a cab, made sure she got home safely. She always said that small kindness kept her from completely falling apart that night. What happened to her? Your sister? Kate asked softly. She's great now. Married to a kindergarten teacher, has 2 kids. Michael smiled. She says getting stood up was the best thing that ever happened to her in retrospect. Kate's phone buzzed again, drawing her attention away from Michael's story. It was another message from Jackson. I'm sorry about tonight. The money was not meant as an insult. Habit of trying to fix things quickly. Can we talk tomorrow? Properly this time. Kate showed the message to Michael, who raised his eyebrows. The plot thickens, he said. What will you do? Before Kate could answer, the coffee shop door flew open, and a harried-looking woman in a sleek pantsuit rushed in, scanning the room frantically. Her gaze landed on their table, And she made a beeline for them. "Michael Bennett?" she asked, her voice clipped and professional. Michael stood, confusion evident on his face. "Yes, that's me. Valerie Winters, Reed Enterprises Legal Department." She thrust out a business card. "Mr. Reed asked me to find you." Kate and Michael exchanged startled glances. "How did you—" Michael began. "Location tracking on Ms. Nichols's phone through the dating app," Valerie said matter-of-factly. "Standard security protocol for executive-level employees at Reed. I need you both to come with me immediately." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. "That's invasive and probably illegal," she said, gathering her purse. "I never consented to being tracked." Valerie's expression remained impassive. "Actually, you did. It's in paragraph 17 of the terms and conditions. The privacy policy explicitly states that location data may be used for security purposes." She checked her watch. "Now please, time is critical." Michael stepped between them. "My client isn't going anywhere without knowing why." "Client?" Kate and Valerie said simultaneously. Michael shot Kate a quick, meaningful look. "Yes, Ms. Nichols has retained my services this evening." Valerie's professional demeanor cracked slightly, showing a flash of annoyance. "Fine. The short version, one of the injured employees has information that only Ms. Nichols can verify. It's related to potential corporate espionage." "That's ridiculous," Kate protested. "I've never even been to a Reed facility. I work in marketing for Carson Media Group." A flicker of something, recognition perhaps, crossed Valerie's face. "Carson Media? You work for Thomas Carson?" "He's the CEO, yes." Valerie pulled out her phone and rapidly typed something. After a moment, she looked up, her expression now deadly serious. "This is bigger than I thought. You need to come with me now, both of you." 20 minutes later, Kate found herself in the back of a luxury SUV with Michael beside her and Valerie in the front passenger seat. The driver, a silent man with a security earpiece, navigated through Chicago's nighttime traffic with practiced efficiency. "Are you going to explain what's happening?" Kate demanded, her earlier embarrassment now replaced with growing anger and concern. Valerie turned in her seat. "Thomas Carson and Jackson Reed have been competitors for years, but recently it's escalated. 3 weeks ago, Reed Enterprises discovered a security breach. Proprietary information about our emergency response system was compromised. The system that was being tested tonight when the explosion occurred. And you think I had something to do with it?" Kate asked incredulously. "We didn't. Until your profile matched with Mr. Reed on the dating app. The algorithm shouldn't have connected you two. You're not in compatible demographic or interest groups. It was manipulated from the outside." Michael leaned forward. "Are you suggesting that Kate was set up by her own boss to spy on Jackson Reed?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet," Valerie replied coolly. "But the timing is suspicious. And one of our injured engineers, before losing consciousness, mentioned the woman from the restaurant and Carson's plan." Kate felt sick. She'd been at Carson Media for 5 years, working her way up from junior copywriter to marketing director. Thomas Carson had always been demanding but fair. The idea that he would use her as an unwitting pawn in corporate espionage was absurd. "And yet, there was that promotion," she said slowly, thinking aloud. 3 weeks ago, Thomas called me into his office and said he was considering me for vice president of marketing. It came out of nowhere. The next day, my dating app glitched and had to be reinstalled." She looked up at Valerie, her mind racing. "But that doesn't prove anything." "Perhaps not," Valerie conceded. "But combined with the engineer's statement and the fact that Carson Media recently acquired a significant stake in Netlink, the company that created your dating app, it's enough to warrant investigation." The SUV pulled up to a private airfield, where a sleek helicopter waited, its rotors already spinning. Kate's heartbeat quickened as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't just about a date gone wrong anymore. She was caught in the middle of something much bigger and potentially dangerous. As they hurried toward the helicopter, Michael grabbed Kate's arm, holding her back for a moment. "You don't have to do this," he said urgently. "We can walk away right now, call the police if necessary." Kate looked at the helicopter, then back at Michael's concerned face. "If what she's saying is true, I've been used. I need to know by whom and why." She squared her shoulders. "Besides, people are hurt. If I can help in any way." Michael nodded, his respect for her evident. "Okay, but I'm coming with you. And for the record, I really am a lawyer, and I really will represent you if needed." "Thank you," Kate said sincerely. Then, with a determined breath, she headed toward the helicopter. The flight to Milwaukee took less than an hour, but to Kate, it felt like an eternity. Her mind replayed every interaction with Thomas Carson over the past month, searching for clues she might have missed. The late-night request to review security protocols for their clients, the sudden interest in her personal life, the generous bonus that had allowed her to buy the designer dress, now ruined by rain. When they landed at the Reed Enterprises research facility, the scene was controlled chaos. Emergency vehicles surrounded the building, their lights casting eerie blue and red shadows. A section of the modern glass structure was shattered, with scorch marks visible on the walls. Valerie led them through a security checkpoint and into a makeshift command center in an undamaged wing of the building. And there, looking exhausted and grim, stood Jackson Reed. He looked up as they entered, his eyes widening in surprise when he saw Kate. "You brought her here?" he asked Valerie, his voice strained. "She might be the key to understanding what happened," Valerie replied. The dating app connection wasn't a coincidence. Jackson ran a hand through his disheveled hair, his gaze fixed on Kate. "I'm sorry about dinner," he said simply. "This isn't how I imagined we'd meet again." Before Kate could respond, a security officer burst into the room. "Sir, we've identified the source of the explosion. It wasn't an accident. And we found this." He held up a small device in an evidence bag. "It was hidden in the restaurant where you were dining earlier tonight. It's a sophisticated listening device." All eyes turned to Kate, whose world was suddenly spinning out of control. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I swear I didn't know." The silence that followed Kate's declaration was deafening. She could feel the weight of suspicion pressing down on her, making it difficult to breathe in the sterile air of the command center. Jackson Reed studied her face with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. After what felt like an eternity, he nodded slightly. "I believe you," he said quietly. The security officer who had brought in the listening device looked skeptical. "Sir, with all due respect, I said I believe her," Jackson repeated firmly. "Ms. Nichols has just as much reason to feel manipulated as any of us." He turned to Valerie. "What's the status of our injured team members?" "Dr. Roberts is stable but still unconscious. Pearson and Maxwell are in surgery," Valerie reported. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. Kate watched this exchange with a growing sense of unreality. Just hours ago, her biggest concern had been impressing a handsome CEO over dinner. Now she was standing in the aftermath of an explosion, possibly implicated in corporate espionage, with 3 people fighting for their lives. "I need to know exactly what's happening," she said, finding her voice at last. "If someone used me as part of this, I deserve to know the whole story." Jackson exchanged a look with Valerie, who gave a slight nod. "Follow me," he said to Kate and Michael. "But this stays between us for now." They followed Jackson through a series of security doors into a minimalist office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Milwaukee skyline. Despite the late hour, the city twinkled with lights, a stark contrast to the darkness Kate felt closing in around her. Jackson pressed his palm against a biometric scanner on the wall. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a high-tech display. He tapped a few commands, and the screen came to life with documents, photographs, and what appeared to be surveillance footage. Reed Enterprises has been developing a revolutionary emergency response system called Guardian, Jackson began, his voice taking on a professional tone that Kate hadn't heard during their dinner. "It uses a network of satellites and ground-based sensors to predict natural disasters before they happen. Earthquakes, floods, tornadoes. Minutes of advance warning might not sound like much, but it can mean thousands of lives saved." "That's incredible," Michael said, clearly impressed. "It would be if it worked consistently," Jackson replied grimly. "We've had successful tests, but there have been anomalies, false positives, missed events. 3 weeks ago, we discovered why." He tapped the screen, bringing up a complex diagram. "Someone had introduced a subtle flaw in our algorithm. Not enough to make the system fail completely, but enough to make it unreliable. Corporate sabotage," Kate murmured, the pieces starting to fit together. "Exactly. And all signs pointed to Carson Media Group." Jackson turned to face Kate directly. "Not the marketing division, but a covert R&D department that officially doesn't exist." Kate shook her head in disbelief. That's impossible. I've worked there for 5 years. I would know if there was a secret R&D division. Would you? Jackson challenged. Thomas Carson is notoriously compartmentalized in his business approach. Need-to-know basis only. Even if that's true, Michael interjected. It doesn't explain why Kate would be involved in this sabotage. Jackson's expression softened slightly as he looked at Kate. I don't believe she was involved knowingly, but someone at Carson wanted eyes and ears close to me. He hesitated. The timing of our match was suspicious. I should have been more cautious, but... He trailed off, a flash of something vulnerable crossing his face before he composed himself again. But what? Kate pressed. But you seemed genuine, he admitted. And I've learned to trust my instincts about people. It's why I agreed to the date, despite my security team's concerns. A knock at the door interrupted them. Valerie entered, her usual composure slightly shaken. Dr. Roberts is awake, she announced, and he's asking for her. She nodded toward Kate. Me? Kate blinked in surprise. But I've never met him. Apparently he has something important to tell you, Valerie replied. Something he says can only be said in person. The hospital wing of the research facility was state-of-the-art, more reminiscent of a luxury hotel than a medical center. Dr. James Roberts lay in a private room, his face pale against the white sheets. Bandages covered his left arm and shoulder, and various monitors beeped steadily beside him. When Kate entered with Jackson and Michael close behind, the injured scientist's eyes flew open. You brought her, he said weakly. His gaze fixed on Kate. Good. Dr. Roberts, Jackson began carefully. You wanted to speak with Ms. Nichols. Roberts nodded, then winced at the movement. Not who you think, he whispered. I'm sorry. Kate stepped closer to the bed. You're not who they think you are, Roberts clarified, his voice gaining strength. Your identity compromised. A chill ran down Kate's spine. What do you mean my identity is compromised? Roberts gestured weakly for water. After taking a sip, he continued, The real Catherine Nichols works for Carson. But she's not you. The room seemed to tilt around Kate. That's ridiculous. I am Catherine Nichols. I have been all my life. Check. Her background, Roberts said to Jackson. Really check. Beyond surface level. Jackson was already on his phone, issuing rapid instructions to someone on the other end. Kate felt Michael's steadying hand on her shoulder as the room threatened to spin around her. This is insane, she protested. I have memories, a life. I grew up in Cleveland. My parents still live there. I went to Northwestern. I have photos, friends. Implanted memories, Roberts interrupted. Advanced psychological technique. Carson's specialty. That's not possible, Michael objected. What you're describing sounds like science fiction. Roberts shook his head slightly. Not fiction. Classified research. MK Ultra continuation. Deep memory manipulation, combined with identity reassignment. Carson bought the research. 10 years ago, Kate felt sick. You're saying my entire life is a lie. That someone... What? Brainwashed me into believing I'm Catherine Nichols. Not entirely a lie, Roberts replied. Framework is real, details unaltered. He looked directly at Kate, his eyes suddenly clear and focused. The key is the birthmark. Kate's hand automatically went to her left shoulder, where a small heart-shaped birthmark had been since birth. How do you know about that? Because, Roberts said, the real Catherine Nichols doesn't have one. The revelation hung in the air like a physical presence. Kate felt as though she might collapse under its weight. Michael's grip on her shoulder tightened, anchoring her to reality, whatever that reality might be. Who am I then? She whispered. Before Roberts could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Jackson's phone rang and he answered it with a terse, What's happening? His expression darkened as he listened. Lock down the facility, he ordered. No one in or out. And get a security team to the medical wing immediately. He hung up and turned to the others. Someone just breached our outer perimeter. They're headed this way. Carson, Roberts said grimly. Coming to... Clean up loose ends. We need to move, Jackson decided, already helping Roberts into a wheelchair. There's a secure bunker 2 levels down. As they hurried through the corridors, Kate's mind raced faster than her feet. If what Roberts said was true, her entire existence was built on fabrications. But it couldn't be true. She had memories, clear as day, of her childhood, her college years, her first apartment. She remembered her parents' faces, the sound of her mother's laugh, the smell of her father's aftershave, and yet there had always been those strange gaps. Periods she couldn't quite recall in detail. The odd sensation sometimes that she was watching herself from outside her body. The recurring nightmares of waking up in a white room, surrounded by faceless figures. "In here," Jackson directed, ushering them into an elevator that required both a key card and biometric scan to operate. As the doors closed, the sound of distant gunfire echoed through the hallway they had just left. The elevator descended rapidly. Kate leaned against the wall, struggling to process everything. "Let's say hypothetically that Roberts is right," she said slowly. "Why would Carson go to such elaborate lengths? Why me? What makes me so important that someone would rewrite my entire identity?" Jackson and Roberts exchanged a meaningful look. "Tell her," Roberts urged. "She deserves to know." Jackson took a deep breath. "If what Roberts is saying is true, then you're not Catherine Nichols. Your real name is Elizabeth Reed." The name struck Kate like a physical blow. "Reed? As in my sister," Jackson confirmed, his voice tight with emotion. "My sister, who supposedly died in a boating accident 6 years ago." The elevator doors opened to reveal a bunker that looked more like a high-tech command center. But Kate barely registered her surroundings. Her world had just been shattered into a million pieces, and she wasn't sure if she would ever be able to put them back together again. "That's not possible," she whispered, even as a strange sense of recognition stirred deep within her. "I can't be your sister. I would remember you. Not if your memories were systematically erased and replaced," Jackson replied, the pain evident in his voice. "Not if someone wanted to use you to get to me and everything I've built." As security personnel rushed to secure the bunker, Kate caught a glimpse of her reflection in a glass panel. For a moment, just a moment, the face looking back at her seemed like that of a stranger. The bunker hummed with activity as Jackson's security team monitored the intruder's progress through the facility. On multiple screens, black-clad figures moved with military precision through corridors and laboratories. Kate, or Elizabeth, if that was truly who she was, watched with a detached sense of unreality. "They're jamming our communications," reported a technician. "We can't call for outside help," Jackson nodded grimly. "Activate Protocol Lazarus. And get Dr. Chen down here. We need her expertise now." As orders were relayed and personnel scrambled to respond, Michael pulled Kate aside to a quieter corner of the bunker. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his eyes filled with genuine concern. Kate gave a hollow laugh. "Oh, I'm fantastic. I just found out my entire life might be a lie. I'm potentially the presumed dead sister of a tech billionaire, and there are armed mercenaries trying to kill us. It's a typical Thursday night." Michael didn't smile at her gallows humor. Instead, he took her hands in his, forcing her to focus on him. "Listen to me. No matter what happens, no matter who you were before, or what memories are real or implanted, what matters is who you are right now. The person you've become, the choices you make, those are real." His words penetrated the fog of confusion surrounding her mind. Kate squeezed his hands gratefully. "Thank you for that. And for not running away when things got dangerous." "Well, I'm either very brave or very stupid," Michael replied with a small smile. "The jury's still out." Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Chen, a petite woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She headed straight for Kate. "You're the one with the supposed memory implantation?" she asked without preamble. Kate nodded uncertainly. "Apparently. I need to examine you. Follow me." In a small medical alcove within the bunker, Dr. Chen performed a series of tests, pupil reactions, reflex responses, and a barrage of seemingly random questions about Kate's memories. "Recall your earliest childhood memory," Dr. Chen instructed. "I was 4, at the Cleveland Zoo with my parents. I dropped my ice cream cone and cried until my father bought me another one," Kate replied automatically. "Now your most painful memory," Kate hesitated. "My college boyfriend breaking up with me at graduation." Dr. Chen made a note. "Not the boating accident where your parents nearly drowned." Kate frowned. "My parents never—" She stopped abruptly as a flash of memory hit her. Rough water, screaming, the suffocating sensation of being underwater. She gasped, clutching the examination table. "What was that?" she demanded shakily. "Memory breakthrough," Dr. Chen explained. The implanted memories are strong, but the original ones aren't completely gone. They're suppressed, buried beneath the false narrative. She turned to Jackson, who had been watching silently from the doorway. It's consistent with advanced memory manipulation techniques. I've only seen case studies, never a live subject. Can you reverse it? Jackson asked. Possibly with time and the right equipment, Dr. Chen replied. But we don't have either right now. A commotion from the main room drew their attention. On the security monitors, the intruders had reached the level above them and were systematically searching each room. They'll find the bunker entrance eventually, Jackson said grimly. We need to move to Plan B, which is? Michael asked. There's a tunnel system beneath the facility, originally built as a Cold War fallout shelter. It leads to a secondary location 2 miles away. We can evacuate Dr. Roberts and the essential personnel. And Kate? Michael pressed. Jackson looked at his sister, or the woman who might be his sister, with a complicated expression. She comes with us. She's the key to understanding what Carson is after. As they prepared to evacuate, an alert sounded from one of the computer terminals. A security technician called out, "Sir, we've intercepted a communication between the intruders. Audio only." Jackson hurried over. "Play it." A cold, familiar voice filled the bunker. "Remember, I want Reed alive. And find the woman. She's the priority. No permanent damage to either of them." Kate felt the blood drain from her face. "That's Thomas Carson." Jackson's expression hardened. "Now we have proof of his involvement. Valerie, make sure this recording is secured and transmitted to our backup servers." The evacuation proceeded quickly and efficiently. Dr. Roberts was loaded onto a stretcher, and essential equipment was packed into waterproof cases. Kate found herself walking between Jackson and Michael as they entered the tunnel system, a concrete passageway dimly lit by emergency lighting. "Jackson," she said hesitantly as they walked, "if I really am Elizabeth, your sister, why would Carson go to such lengths? What was he trying to achieve?" Jackson was quiet for a moment before answering. "Elizabeth was brilliant, a neuroscientist specializing in brain-computer interfaces. She was developing technology that could revolutionize how we treat neurological disorders. But her research had other applications, like memory manipulation," Kate surmised. Among other things, Jackson confirmed. She disappeared during a boating trip 6 years ago. The Coast Guard found the boat, but not her body. "I never believed she was dead. I've had private investigators searching for her ever since." "And you think Carson found her first? Took her research and used it on her?" "It fits," Jackson said grimly. Carson's company suddenly made breakthroughs in neural interface technology about 5 years ago. Technology that looked remarkably similar to what Elizabeth had been developing. They walked in silence for several minutes, the only sounds their footsteps and the occasional drip of water from the tunnel ceiling. Kate's mind whirled with possibilities and fragmented memories. If she was Elizabeth Reed, where did Kate Nichols end and Elizabeth begin? Were any of her memories real? The tunnel began to slope upward, and eventually they reached a metal door. Beyond it lay a warehouse converted into an emergency facility, stocked with supplies and equipment. As the group spread out to establish a temporary command center, Kate wandered to a window looking out at the pre-dawn sky. The first hints of sunrise were appearing on the horizon, a surreal contrast to the darkness of the past few hours. She sensed, rather than heard, Jackson approach. "There's a way to know for certain," he said quietly. "A birthmark isn't proof enough, but there's something else." Kate turned to face him. "What?" Elizabeth had a titanium plate in her right wrist. A childhood injury. She fell from a tree when she was 10. Any medical scan would show it. Kate stared at her right wrist. She had always attributed the occasional ache there to too much typing, too many hours at her computer. "Let's find out," she said with determination. The portable X-ray machine confirmed it within minutes. There, clearly visible on the scan, was a small titanium plate in Kate's right wrist. "It's true," she whispered, staring at the undeniable evidence. "I'm Elizabeth Reed." The realization should have been devastating, but instead Kate felt an odd sense of relief. The persistent feeling of disconnection she had experienced throughout her life, the sense that something fundamental was missing, suddenly made sense. "We still don't know how much of my memory is real and how much is fabricated," she said to Jackson, who stood beside her, studying the X-ray with glistening eyes. We'll figure it out, he promised. Together. A sudden commotion interrupted their moment of connection. Valerie burst into the room, her usual composure completely shattered. We've got incoming helicopters. They've found us. How? Jackson demanded. Valerie's eyes fell on Kate. The tracking device, it must be in her. Carson's people aren't following the dating app anymore. They're following something else. Kate instinctively touched the back of her neck, where a small tender spot had bothered her for years. She had always assumed it was a mole. Here, she said. I think it's here. Dr. Chen quickly examined the spot and confirmed with a handheld scanner. It's subcutaneous. A small tracker, military grade by the looks of it. Can you remove it? Jackson asked urgently. Yes, but I need a few minutes and a sterile environment. We don't have a few minutes, Valerie said, gesturing to the security feeds showing 3 helicopters approaching. It was Michael who provided the solution. We don't need to remove it, he said. We just need to make them think they're following the right signal. He turned to the security team. Do you have any drones? 10 minutes later, Kate stood with Jackson, Michael, and the core team in a hidden basement level beneath the warehouse as a maintenance drone carrying Kate's extracted tracker flew in the opposite direction, leading Carson's helicopters on a wild goose chase across Milwaukee. The local FBI field office has been notified, Valerie reported. I've sent them the audio evidence of Carson's involvement in the attack. They're moving to arrest him now. It's almost over, Jackson said, the relief evident in his voice. He turned to Kate. What happens next is up to you. If you want to reclaim your life as Elizabeth Reed, I'll help you every step of the way. If you prefer to remain Kate Nichols, I'll respect that too. Kate considered this for a long moment. The person she had been for the past 6 years, Kate Nichols, marketing director, Chicago resident, had a life, friends, routines. But that person had been built on lies, constructed by someone who had stolen her true identity for their own purposes. I don't think I can go back to being just Kate, she said slowly. But I'm not sure I remember how to be Elizabeth either. She looked between Jackson and Michael. Maybe I need to be someone new, someone who acknowledges both parts of my life. Whatever you decide, Michael said gently. You won't have to face it alone. 3 months later, Elizabeth Kate Reed stood on the balcony of her new apartment in Chicago, watching the sunset over the lake. The past quarter year had been a whirlwind of discovery. Medical procedures to safely remove the remaining memory blocks, and the beginnings of reconstructing her true history. Thomas Carson was in federal custody, charged with corporate espionage, attempted murder and human experimentation. His empire was crumbling as investigations revealed the full extent of his illegal research programs. The door to the balcony slid open, and Michael stepped out, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, handing her one. Kate smiled, accepting the glass. "Just reflecting on how much has changed. 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was. Now I'm relearning my own life story. Any regrets?" Michael asked. Kate considered this. "Surprisingly few. I've gained a brother, reclaimed parts of myself I didn't know were missing, and..." She looked at Michael meaningfully. "Made some new connections I wouldn't trade for anything." Michael's smile warmed her more than the evening sun. Their relationship had developed naturally amidst the chaos, built on mutual respect and shared experience. The doorbell rang, interrupting their moment. "That'll be Jackson," Kate said. "He's bringing the old research files he found in storage. Apparently I was working on something revolutionary before." Everything happened. As she moved to answer the door, Kate reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this point. What had begun as a disastrous date had transformed into a rediscovery of her true self. The road ahead would not be easy. Reconciling 2 identities never could be. But for the first time in years, she felt whole. Jackson greeted her with the easy familiarity they had redeveloped over recent months. Behind him stood Dr. Roberts, fully recovered and eager to resume their collaborative work. "Ready to change the world?" Jackson asked as he entered, carrying a box of research materials. Kate glanced at Michael, who gave her an encouraging nod, then back to her brother and colleague. "I think I already have," she replied with a smile, "but I'm just getting started." The 4 of them gathered around the dining table, spreading out documents and digital files, the foundations of Elizabeth Reed's groundbreaking work. As Kate immersed herself in the familiar yet new concepts, pieces of her original passion and purpose clicked into place like missing puzzle pieces finally found. She had tried to sue a CEO for abandoning her mid-date, only to discover he was her long-lost brother. Minutes later, she had regretted her hasty judgment, and now months later that regret had transformed into gratitude for the chain of events that had led her back to herself. Not just Kate, not just Elizabeth, but the woman she was meant to be all along.